Welcome everyone to another Keptn community meeting. Today is April 16, 2020, week 5 for us here in Europe in quarantine. What is it over there in the US? Week 3, 4?
It's all Groundhog's Day here. It's hard to tell. I think it's a Thursday.
Okay.
Week 27.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for joining, and also for those that will watch this maybe on later on YouTube. So like every week, we take the community meeting to talk about new things that the community has built, new use cases, some stuff that came out from the core development team. Today we have one big presentation around how to automate service delivery with Atlassian and Keptn. So that's really great to have these guys, to have Atlassian. Ian, hello, welcome. Thanks for joining from Texas. And Rob from Dynatrace, who in collaboration with Ian has worked out the integration, and they will show it to us later in a live demo, and you guys have a couple of slides also prepared. But before we kick it off, I want to also highlight another item that actually Jürgen has been working on pretty hard over the last couple of days and weeks. There's a new tutorials page on Keptn. So what we've heard from a feedback perspective, we had the tutorials on the Keptn's website in the doc, and it was kind of a little intermix. There was documentation and tutorials, and I think it was our first attempt to provide obviously content for tutorials and documentation. What we learned is, and also thanks to the feedback from you, we separated kind of tutorials into a separate tutorial channel now. It's tutorials.keptn.sh. And then also the documentation, while we haven't yet refactored the documentation yet, but you will really see that the documentation will also change. So that we have a clear separation between tutorials is how you can learn end-to-end different use cases, whether you want to do a full tour, whether you want to do quality gates, whether you want to do self-healing or performance as a self-service on the different platforms. You go there and you learn how this works with the sample apps we've prepared for you. And if you then have specific questions on, okay, how does the CLI work? How does a great project work? How can I adapt this to my own project? This is when you would then go to the documentation. But please check out the new tutorials page, and special thanks to Jürgen, because you put a lot of effort in there to get this going. And I yet have to deliver a tutorial. I know I promised you will get one soon on performance as a self-service. Just a little bit behind my own schedule, but it will be there soon. All right, so that was the first big thing. The second thing now is really, I want to hand it over to, I guess, Rob, are you sharing or is it Ian?
I'm gonna be doing the sharing.
Okay, perfect. Then
okay.
Rob, I will stop sharing on my end. Very happy that you give us a little insights on what you guys have been working on when it comes to integrating Keptn with the Atlassian tool suite.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to share my screen. Can you see this okay?
Yep, it's all good.
All right, great. So, so yeah, we're excited to be part of this. So yeah, so we had a short introduction. Right, I'm Rob Jan. I'm a technical partner manager, and I work closely with our strategic partners like Atlassian. And so we've been working together to really kind of showcase, Bitbucket pipelines and how we can kind of integrate, these SLO-based quality validations in the workflow. Ian, do you want a quick introduction of yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Ian Buchanan. I work closely with partners like Dynatrace to help make sure that Atlassian works well as a complete tool chain. Yeah, so I was really happy to work with Dynatrace on getting this working with Keptn. Okay, great.
All right, so yeah, so I just prepared a couple slides, and then we're going to get into a live demo. But really, this is one of the main use cases within Keptn where, and one of the drivers behind it, where we're really trying to move towards microservices, deliver software faster, and part of that is kind of using more modern tool sets, including Bitbucket pipelines in the cloud. So we're really here to show how we can do that, and there's a real great synergy between the two products here, where we have a modern pipelining tool, Bitbucket pipelines, which is in the cloud, able to deploy code. You'll see later when we demo it, these are all kind of Dockerized steps, really powerful and scalable. And then we combine that with the SLO quality gates in Keptn. And that's where we're going to demo this today. And just as a quick overview, what we've implemented and we're going to demo is Bitbucket has the ability to package, some of the pipeline tasks into what they call pipes. So we can both build these into a Dockerized step, and you can see kind of on the bottom here, when you incorporate this into your Bitbucket YAML pipeline definition, it's really just calling that out. We've published these as an official pipe. So in the Atlassian site, you can just search and find these automatically. And so like if I'm in my code editor, I can search for Dynatrace this way, but you're not limited to do an official pipe. So anyone can build a pipe. You can just put it as your Docker image. And then here on the line, say 43, it would actually just say like Docker blah, 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 where your image is. But, we're kind of, making commitment by Dynatrace to kind of support some core functions like the push events, which we'll see, as well as the Keptn one, which we're going to see. And so all these, there's a link here on the top, so you can search for that, but there's a number of ways of integrations. And Ian, I don't know if you want to add any more on just sort of, the kind of the architecture of Bitbucket, kind of in pipes and kind of what's the thinking is behind that.
I think you've covered it pretty well. That Bitbucket Bitbucket Pipelines is a cloud-based CI/CD system. Depends heavily on Docker for helping manage the build environments. And so the pipes are just a way to encapsulate all of that. And this helps us get Dynatrace specific tasks into a Bitbucket Pipelines pipe.
Okay, cool. All right, so I'm going to just as a refresher for people that may not be familiar with Quality Gates from Keptn, really what drives this whole thing is it's a declarative file. So we really want to have, just like we do configuration as code, our infrastructure definitions as code, we want to have a validation that's also by code. And so we have so Keptn has defined a specification file, and I'll kind of walk through that real quick. So as part of setting up the pipeline in the project, we are registering it within Keptn, and we'll show how that works. And then we have this these files. So in this case, this is we're looking at the service level objective file, where we're defining the types of service level indicators that we want to measure as far as our test. So here, as I walk through it, we're going to simulate, this response time of 95 percentile. So our system would be gathering this data, in our case from Dynatrace, but then our objective is to say, I want to be, under, and these numbers are in milliseconds, under 500 milliseconds for, just acceptable, or, a good solid pass would be 200. So you can see we're really shooting for an objective in the time series data to be within that range. And so then when the automatic grading comes along, where we can then say, all right, if during the average of this time series data, you actually collected, a 0.5, say you're within the warning range for that particular metrics. But then we build up other metrics, like say SQL statements that are taking place, and this could also have a similar, measurement. And then one of the neat things about Quality Gates, it can be a static threshold, as you can see, as well as a build-to-build comparison. So you could say over the last X number of runs, as long as I was within 2% of previous runs, then I'm good. And so then at the end of this, you have a total score. So you have, based on the sum of all these scores, then you're going to get whether the overall thing passes or fails. And I think that's where we call it the red light, green light. So I think, so hopefully that explains kind of quickly that concept. So it's really powerful. And the way we also are combining this with another just concept, and I think I'll show how it all ties together. Another thing that we built a pipe for is Dynatrace information events. So Dynatrace is a way that we can kind of integrate Dynatrace, the platform, into other tools in the ecosystem, whether it's a CI/CD pipelining tool in this example, we can, or infrastructure code deployment changes, we can inform Dynatrace for things that took place in the environment. And so within the core product, this is all in the core product of Dynatrace, these types of events can show up. So now you can have kind of context for what was happening for a deployment event, and all these things are tied to the specific entities that you want to associate this event for. But then the power of this is not only can I see that this event took place, and it's easy to say, hey, I saw a performance problem at this time, and oh, there also was a deployment going on. It also is informing the Dynatrace AI engine. And so as the AI engine is calculating the problem, and what the root cause is, it can associate those events as part of the event history of that time frame, so that you know that this, in this example, this carts was having a failure, but oh, by the way, there was also a configuration change that may be related to the root cause of this problem. So it becomes a pretty powerful kind of way to kind of tie this all together. And if you notice on the bottom, and I'll demo this, that we can put into the event metadata hyperlinks, so we can put the link right back to the Bitbucket pipeline, which is what we built, to say this is the actual job that ran that deployment or config change that then may be the result of the problem I have. Okay, so let's just kind of tie this into just a quick conceptual flow, and then we'll actually demo all this stuff. So the idea is, like, a developer would, typically start with a backlog item, make a Jira ticket, log that item, and then they would, make a feature branch to work with that backlog item, make their code change, and then as part of that code change, they could, check in or refine these service level objective files that say, I want my microservice to have this, or, I'm looking for a performance improvement. I want to adjust my SLAs to be tighter, for example. So then I could push my code, and now it's triggering this into the Bitbucket pipeline code. So automatic trigger from the push, and then a typical flow, then that what we built in the demo is that we're going to, in our case, we're building a Dockerized microservice that we're going to push into a Docker Hub. We're going to deploy this into a Kubernetes environment. Dynatrace is in that environment, automatically monitoring that application under test. Then we're going to push these push events that I just described, like push the Dynatrace deployment event to let it know that a deployment took place. We're going to run a performance test, which collects our data. We're going to push another event to say a performance test took place within this time frame. Then we're going to call the Keptn quality gate and say, for this test start time, end time frame, how did my service levels look? And then this is where we can stop or fail our pipeline. And then along the way, because Keptn also has integrations, as well as Bitbucket has integrations to notification systems like Slack and Teams, all of this data, the pipeline running, the pipeline failing, the Keptn quality gates failing or passing, will all also get notified into the Slack channel or Teams channel that you've configured. Okay, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of demo what this actually looks like, so you can see that it is real. So first of all this code is available out out on Bitbucket. So first of all, we have created a, we'll just do the push event first. So the push event code, and this is under the Dynatrace account, and it's a push event, and there's a pretty long README file that explains how all this works. And so then with examples and things like that. Then we also have at a Keptn account, we've created the Keptn quality gate, which also has kind of a long README file here. So then when we get into our sample app, which is also on the public, there's a Dynatrace demos account where we actually have this account here, and all these screenshots, and there's a very long description of all these things. And we'll see as we do the push events, as we call the quality gate, all this is kind of described. And I'm not going to get into the details of all of this today, but there's also a setup README file that gets into all the details of all the setup. I'll probably be working with Keptn team to maybe put this into the tutorials, because this is very similar. A lot of the stuff of how you set up the environment just to get Keptn installed is kind of part of those two tutorials. Then we layer on top of it the Bitbucket pipeline.
Yeah, that would actually be really great. I think that makes a lot of sense, even though still keep it here for people that want to see it here, but get it over to the tutorials, because that's where the majority of the Keptn audience will typically start their journey.
Right. All right, so let's go ahead just so we can fire off a demo. So in the sample app that we have, I'm just going to show, where's my sample app? Wrong tab. So in here, I have kind of a Kubernetes environment. This is sort of, I give all the credit to Andy for doing this approach. We have a simple application that is running in Kubernetes. We have two namespaces. So we have this is the name of my the namespace, Bitbucket Demo Staging. I have another namespace, Bitbucket Demo Production. And so then these are deployed out in that environment. So we're currently running version 1. And so just for the demo purposes, we have an app, I'll go back to this. We have a behavior built into the app. It's a node application. All the code is in that repo, where if I'm on version 1, I have normal behavior. And then if I have version 2, I have problems, of failures. That's what I'm going to simulate here. So for demonstration purposes, all the code is in here, but I can simply edit this version file. I'll just change this to version 2, and this gets checked in with the code, and I will just add this in now and then push it. And so now what we would have seen now back on so this is the Dynatrace, Dynatrace demos repo. So if we click in here into the pipelines, this is the area of Bitbucket where executing pipelines are running. So you can see now it automatically triggered and is now running this update to version 2 commit. So in this scenario, I'm not doing a feature branch. I'm kind of working right off a master just for demonstration purposes. But now all of these steps in my pipeline are executing. So the first thing it's doing is, grabbing some variables for the URL in my environment. And actually, while I do that, I'll just show this another feature. So in Bitbucket, you can define variables in multiple ways. One of the ways you can define something is in a built-in type called deployments. And so what I've done in my case for the deployment configuration, each of these deployment areas can have environment-specific URLs. So in this case, my app URL, I've kind of configured my environment. So this is my URL to the development environment, staging, everything's the same with the staging. And so the pipeline will, based on the environment it's running in, will then can pull these environment specific variables. You can also have kind of global variables, which are called repository variables. So these are all of the variables that are specific to this repo and then are read in kind of dynamically on the fly. And you can see you can make them secret. So tokens can be, masked and will not show up in logs and things like that. So then my pipeline, let's go back and see how it's doing. It's now running. And so now what it's done is it's set these variables. And if I click on it, you can see what it's actually doing. So in my case, all it was really doing was saying, I'm in this, my staging environment, here's my app URL. And then as I'm building my code, it's doing a series of commands, but essentially what it's doing at the end of the day here is using that image, building it, pushing it into my registry, which is Docker Hub. And then now I'm actually deploying this thing. And what you can see here, kind of while it's running, is certain commands in pipelines are all run in Docker steps. So let me just give me a second. When you'll see it pull the image down. Let me just refresh it. Yeah, it already went past it. So when it's doing a particular step, it will be pulling down the code that it needs to run this particular step. And in this one, I am taking the Kubernetes file and I'm updating the image that I'm going to deploy. As you remember, it was version 2. So I'm deploying version 2. I have kind of a simple script to make sure that the environment is up. And now I'm actually running, this is the step that runs the Dynatrace push event. So once this kind of starts, you can see that it will pull. Give it a second. Sometimes I have to refresh it. Yeah, there you go. So the part of the build setup was, you can see it needed to use the Dynatrace pipeline. It's downloading it. And then now it's actually invoking the Dynatrace Bitbucket push event. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, here's a step, sorry, I apologize. This is where it's actually pulling the Docker image, blah, blah, blah. And then you can see here, this is the code output, kind of debug output that I put in here. So as I'm executing the pipe, I can see the URL I'm hitting, the post event, the event properties, and then this is the internal IDs from Dynatrace. So if we look back in Dynatrace, it should be synced. Just refresh my page here in Dynatrace. So the pipeline is still running, but what I should see now is, there you go. Let me zoom in just a touch. So you can see, so in Dynatrace, if you haven't seen Dynatrace, Dynatrace is, it's showing this service and on this sort of dashboard where I've established this service. It's a Node.js application, and I've associated a number of tags with it. I won't get into all the details of that, but this is how, when we use the APIs, I can say, send an event to this application with this name, with this service, with this stage, and then this particular event, which I kind of showed the screenshot of, will now show this here. So now this deployment event, and you can see here, we've built the plugin where all of the metadata, I'll zoom in just a bit more, will come in from that specific job. So this one we're running, which is simple node service pipeline job 140. Let's live demo here. Let's go back and see. Yep. So this is number 140. Perfect. So if I were to click on this, it will open up a new tab and immediately jump to that pipeline. So that's where you would know, hey, you know, something was happening. And this annotation event is something that we're doing for the load test. So now while the load test is running, it's a very short load test. This also has similar data to let you see, you know, how that load test ran. So let's go back to the pipeline. So the load test will take about a minute, should be done. Let me refresh the screen, and then it moves on to the quality gate, which is the second thing we want to demo. So right, so here we are calling the quality gate. And again, it's downloading that Docker file, Keptn quality gate, blah, blah, blah. And then now it's invoking the quality gate. So the first thing the quality gate does is sends an evaluation event to Keptn for the time frame for, and these, the project service stage, those map to the tags that I was interested in. I've also sent in labels for the Bitbucket pipeline, and then it told it where it's coming from. So if I go to the Keptn bridge, which is the UI for Keptn, you can see I've already registered this sample project. So in my case, I only have a Bitbucket demo. And you can see that these start evaluation events are taking place. So in here, I've built labels for, this is build 140, it came from Bitbucket, and it's now starting to do the evaluation. If I keep refreshing, it usually comes within about a minute. And retrieval done. There you go. Let me refresh it again. And we should hopefully get our score here on this next refresh. There we go. Oh, and I failed. All right, something failed. So my evaluation was done. You can see, so what did I violate? I violated something. This was my error rate, which is perfect. So since I deployed version 2, this application has built-in errors. And so I forced this to fail because the app code was having a high error rate. And so we could see that's the behavior we actually wanted. So if I go back to here and refresh, right, so also in the debug output, we can see that after it kept waiting for the results, the results became ready, and I could see my violation of my response time was fine, or no violation. And then if I get down to my error, if I can scroll somewhere in here, there's in there somewhere. Anyway, well, there's an error rate in here, right? So then my overall status was a fail. So built into the pipe is if I get a status fail, it will actually stop the pipeline. It wouldn't die. We have a feature in the code where you can also say, I don't want the step to fail, and then I want to maybe manually parse this, and that's sort of in the README. There's both those scenarios. Let the pipe determine whether you pass or fail based on the Keptn result, or you can just take this whole result and then parse it as a secondary step to decide, you know, your own maybe custom logic for determining whether you pass or fail or not. So then back on. So then what we've prevented now is this rolling into production. So I'm gonna kick this off. We'll probably run out of time, or maybe I can do this to answer some questions. But let me just put this back to version 1, and we will see that this will. I should say git add version, git push. So by pushing back to version 1, this will now restart another pipeline and should go all the way through. And you can see if this does pass, it will then deploy this into the production environment. So Andy, I don't know if there was any questions that came up at this time, or maybe you guys want to ask a question or two?
There were a couple of questions that actually came in. So the first one is, I know you mentioned it, but you didn't show it, that you were uploading the SLIs.
Sure.
People were asking where are these SLIs defined?
Sure, not a problem. Okay, so let's go back to the code. So at the moment, the way Keptn, the current requirement for Keptn is that these SLO files all need to, you have to send the files directly to Keptn, and Keptn can internally store them, and Keptn can also optionally synchronize them to what's called an upstream repo. So in my case, and I'll show you kind of the mechanics of this. So I've built a separate repo that stores all of these particular SLO files, and as I've registered them into Keptn. And so where they come from, so in the source repo, so maybe I'm not answering this quickly. So let me step back. So in the sample app, I have a folder called scripts, and they're inside of there are these Keptn files. So these are my setup files that I needed for the Keptn setup. So the first thing was when you onboard a project into Keptn, you need to give it a shipyard file, which in this case is just defining my 3 logical stages of things. And I wanted to make this map my 3 kind of tiered environment. So then for each of those environments, I had 2 files. So you can see I have an SLO for each of the environments and an SLI for each of the environments. So if we start with the indicators, let's look at the staging since we're looking at staging. This is the file. Keptn has 2 different files. One is the indicator, and these are all the metrics that I want to contain. All of these are coming from Dynatrace in this example. So this sort of syntax maps to the way you query Dynatrace using the metrics API. And you can see here I've customized each of the tags that work for my my particular environment. So I've kind of overridden Keptn's default behavior where it's expecting a Keptn project, Keptn stage, Keptn service. So in my case, I've overridden these tags to say in my app, it's application Bitbucket demo, my service is called this, my stage is called this. Mm-hmm. And then I've repeated that for each of the metrics that I want to capture as the SLIs. And then the SLOs, if I look at the SLOs, this is kind of that file that you saw kind of in the PowerPoint slide. So now I'm saying, I want to evaluate this service level indicator, which I defined in the other file, according to this criteria. And then here's the error rate 1, and then here's the total score. Mm-hmm. And so then each of these files are kind of living here. Yeah. And then the way I onboard them, I'll just show you because I have it in the setup file, is I use the Keptn CLI, and I'll just kind of scroll down. So what I do is the process of setting up a project is in Keptn, I created my project with my shipyard file that lives in this repo. And then I run the CLI to add these various resources. And that's how they got into Keptn. Mm-hmm. Because I set up my project, if you notice here, with the downstream repo, which is Bitbucket in this case. So Bitbucket is one of the options in addition to GitHub that you can register these files. So once they got registered, they got synchronized into my this other repo called Keptn node service. So then if I look in, it will then make branches that map to my shipyard file. If I look in staging, I can now drill into and see my SLI file that's here, and then my SLO file that's here. Mm-hmm. So once they're registered in Keptn, you edit them within the downstream repo, or you continue to push updates into Keptn to re-add those resource files.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Yeah, I know the reason why well, thanks for showing this. And I think we too also worked on also an approach that Christian Heckelmann did with another CI tool, and also I think Christoph did it as part of your regular pipeline where you are building and deploying. You can even also upload and re-upload your SLI and SLO files fully automatically, which means as a developer makes a code change in the same source code repo, they could also hold the SLI and SLO files, and they could automatically be updated to Keptn as part of the pipeline run.
That's
which
right.
is also a great way of doing it.
Right. So while you're talking, I pulled up the Keptn API. So this is the technique. We can share the code where he did this, but basically you can use the CLI to register these files. Once they're in a repo, you can edit it directly in the repo and it synchronizes, or you can use the Keptn API to directly add these resources. So what I've learned from this post request, you would have the name of like slo.yaml, and then the resource content, you actually have to send the actual contents of the file as a UE encoded string. So that was kind of getting real technical here, but that's kind of one way to implement it. So you can, in your pipeline, read your own repo, call the post event to push it. This is another technique. And then I think over time, the Keptn team is going to be building in the feature where these files can be directly synced with the repo that actually has all your code in it.
Mhm.
Okay, so while this is running, let's see, this should have, maybe we'll go back to the demo here. Sorry, so now it's gone through the quality gate step. So in this case, remember it's version 1. And if I scroll down to the results, in this case now, blah, 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 the quality gate passed because version 1 passed, version 2 does not pass. And if I go back to the bridge, if I refresh my bridge, hopefully we'll see a green light in here as well. Yep. Right, so this, remember, is build 141, and you can see here now my service level passed because my error rate is now 0, and it matches my criteria.
Can you click on the comparison evaluation? Exactly. So I think the heat map is also pretty sweet because you can see some historical data trends,
right,
on how your builds are doing. Exactly.
Right. I have a lot of kind of development test runs in here, but you can see, right, if I click on the little cell like error rate here, it actually shows me this is the one that failed, and if I click on the last one, you can see this is the one that passed, and that's really cool, right? Yeah. And then your chart, which I love this chart as well. You can look at my error rate, and you know, so you can see like I was good, and then this last run, you know, I had like a little blip there in my right run. And then I think just the last thing is I'll refresh this screen. I may have to change my sequence of my build, but it seems like it only pushes my Keptn evaluation event if you pass, which I need to fix that. But you can see here, I'm also pushing a Keptn result event.
That's great.
And then what's kind of cool, so this is a new feature of the Keptn bridge. They've had this deep link. So now I can deep link off of that hyperlink and go directly to the Keptn evaluation event for that particular run. So this is sort of what we're seeing more modern tools doing is we have an ecosystem of tools. We don't want to have to, you know, log in and find and search things. We just want to do one click. And same thing, and just the last little short demo, like what was happening is on my Slack channel, all of these things while we were talking were also being pushed out into my Slack channel. So this last one here is, you know, my past. You can see here. Actually, then because I've hooked up the Bitbucket also can push things. So it says my build 140 failed. I can see the job that I ran. This is the failure event from the previous run. So this is really, you know, hopefully gives you a taste of kind of, you know, really cool way that we can integrate in these different, you know, platforms. Was there another question, Andy? I may be running out of time, but just there was another question.
No, I think there's one more question I want to quickly jump in. It basically says you are executing the tests from Bitbucket. Why not use Keptn? Because Keptn also has a test execution capability. Would this be possible too?
Absolutely, yeah. So I think that's a great question. So Keptn is right. There's many ways you can. There's two use cases of Keptn. I'm using Keptn to manage my continuous delivery process from the deployment to the test execution to the quality gates to the promotion strategies. But in this case, we're choosing to show how we can integrate just the quality gate within the pipeline. So let me just show the code real quick, just because I think that will show you, because a lot of people have an investment in their existing tools. So whether it's you know, Bamboo in this case, or Bitbucket in this case, sorry, but you could be a Bamboo, or it's really just a REST call. So that's what the power of this is that for this pipeline that I may have an investment in that does a lot of other things, CI work, you know, security checks, I can now just simply add into my pipeline this step. So in my case, I'm kind of getting to the answer, but I want to choose how I want to build my code. I want to deploy it in my particular way. This is how we can call the deployment events. I want to run my load test. And then this is really all you need to do to make this quality gate call. So so it allows like a real easy way to get introduced into Keptn. And remember, Keptn at the moment is a Kubernetes deployment thing. So if you are not running Kubernetes as where you're deploying your code, or there isn't yet a service built to kind of tie into another load testing tool, then this is a good way to get started. You can kind of insert this one step, and we can do it. Andy has another example, and I may look to do it as well for Bitbucket, is what we call performance as a self-service. So we're basically, I'm directly calling the Keptn evaluation event. So I'm just invoking the service of Lighthouse that says, evaluate this SLO file and tell me if it passes or fails. But we could also wrapper it into a little more steps where I can say, let's push a deployment event, which could then trigger a performance test, invoke some of the other services to push these events automatically, perform the evaluation automatically, and you can kind of wrapper multiple things in sort of a single, performance testing combined with a quality gate evaluation kind of in one shot.
Yeah.
But this is also helpful. Like if I just did a deployment, say to production, where I'm not running a performance test, I want to deploy my code, let some real user traffic take place. Then I want to call a quality gate. I can redefine my service level objectives from a production real user traffic, and then I can inject this same step into a another scenario.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
And
yeah. Considering the time, is there anything you had? Maybe
I'll just leave this up in case people want to take a screenshot of this. This is where some links. So so you can learn about Bitbucket pipelines here. This is sort of the landing page where you can see the Dynatrace integration as well as other ones. I didn't get into it, but I was using another pipe called the AWS kube control pipe. So I was able to run my Kubernetes command with a single pipe that wrappered all of that stuff for AWS. That was a really cool feature. And then these are the links to all of the code and the sample app. And then there's Ian and my contact information. And plus we're also in the Keptn Slack channel. You can find us there too.
Perfect.
Thank you, Andy.
Yeah, and I also want to, thank you so much I know there's a lot of work that went into this, because not only did you build the Keptn integration, you also built the Dynatrace integration, and thanks for giving an overview. And I know there's much more also on the operations side. I know there's integrations with Opsgenie and other, even more tools that Atlassian has, but we will have, and this is a kind of a preview for folks that are interested, in 2 weeks on May the 4th. We will have a so-called Dynatrace performance clinic where I'm happy to have you back, and then we'll dive deeper, especially also on these Dynatrace specific use cases. So that's awesome.
Great.
Rob, can you do me one more favor? I know the blog post that you put out there. If you could put that up again.
Sure, absolutely.
I just want to make sure.
Am I still sharing? I'm
You're
sorry.
still sharing, yeah?
I am still sharing. Okay,
yeah.
That's fine. Yep.
So I'm also posting it in the chat window to all the attendees. It's basically a great summary and a great overview of what you have just demonstrated.
Trying to figure out, sorry, I'm trying to get out of Zoom.
That's okay.
Can you just stop can you force my sharing to stop?
Sure, I will just take over, and let me
I'm technically challenged.
That's okay.
Okay, there you go. Thank you.
There you go.
Yep, and actually it's in the chat window, I believe, in the, it's to all panelists. Let me send it to everybody.
Yeah. No, I'm just trying to load it as well.
Okay, there you go. So it's in the all attendees link of Zoom chat. There you go.
Yeah. Cool. So that's, here we go. I'm just opening up as well. Hopefully you can see my screen, but for everybody that is interested in check this out. I think it also links to your Bitbucket pipelines, to your pipes.
Correct.
So that's great.
Absolutely, yeah. And this is a great resource. I mean, I learned a lot, as I was learning about Bitbucket. This is sort of not only are there articles like blogs here, but there's also a lot of how-to, questions, and you can search this site. It's a very good resource. I learned a lot from, teaching myself this as I did it. So,
cool.
Great resource.
All right, so I want to kind of conclude today's meeting with a quick outlook. So obviously today we had the integration with Atlassian. In 2 weeks we are giving a little tour through, because Keptn is obviously open, event-driven, so being able to integrate with all sorts of tools. We'll do a session on Jenkins, and on May 14th, we'll do one on Azure DevOps. And also just a shout out or a heads up on other events where we are going to present Keptn. So you can see here May and June and also July, we have a couple of events already lined up. This is part of the Keptn community meeting notes, which is the Google Doc that you will also find on our Keptn community page. And as Rob said earlier, the best way to get in touch with all of us is to the Slack channel. So in case you have not yet registered on the Slack, just go to the Keptn community and register for the Slack. And if you want to get started, if you're fresh, make sure you check out our new tutorials page, tutorials.keptn.sh. This is where you have the initial set of tutorials. I can definitely suggest you doing the full tours either on Dynatrace or Prometheus. There's also a quality gate with Prometheus already, and there will be more around performance. And Rob, I'm happy to hear that you want to also contribute your tutorial to it as well. So we will have a Keptn with Bitbucket tutorial here soon as well.
Cool, great.
All right. And Ian, thank you as well. I know you are, even though you have been a little quiet and Rob did all the talking today, but I know you are, well, thanks for the support from Atlassian here. This is really...
Absolutely was. It's been a pleasure working with all of you.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, Dan, I wish you all the best. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.